Hello, my name is Phil Fox and I work for Middleby Marshall, and the purpose of this video is to help communicate how to properly remove the components inside the bake chamber for cleaning and the proper reassembly. First thing I want to do is identify the owner's manual. In the event you can't find yours, please go to our website, www.middleby-marshall.com, and I want you to show this to your employees, especially the operation and the maintenance of this machine. This is our PS640 WOW. It's some new technology that we introduced. The other thing I wanted to bring up before we talk about disassembly is 4 things. Safety is a big thing at Middleby Marshall. Make sure before you start to clean the oven, you unplug the cord from the wall, and or if it's an electric oven and it's hardwired to the wall, make sure the circuit breaker is turned off. That's number 1. Safety. We don't want any electricity in the unit. Number 2, to properly clean this oven, I want it to be cool. It's got to be cool to the touch. So I recommend you do your cleaning in the morning before you first use the oven. The third thing is positioning of all the components that we're going to be removing. I've already marked them with a magic marker. And lastly is fit. As we reposition them, we need to wiggle these fingers to make sure that they overlap like shingles on a roof. And I'll explain that as we go forward. Now we're ready for disassembly. But before I do that, there's a little white label that we place, not in this control cabinet, the other control cabinet on the other end, that explains the position of the fingers for a left to right direction. And there's letters, and then to the side here is like a legend as to what each finger consists of. And I will show you when I start to disassemble where these part numbers are engraved on those parts to make it easy for reassembly. So we have an eyebrow here. This eyebrow is adjustable, and basically what we try to do, or we ask our customers to do, is make sure that the product that's going to be processed will fit underneath the eyebrow, and try to lower the eyebrow to the lowest position just to maintain the heat in the oven cavity. It's going to make the climate in your working area cooler, and that's why we have this adjustment. So this is the eyebrow. The next thing that's removed is called an upper end plug. I'll put it back just so you can see how I did that. You just pull it straight out. And then inside here is our finger package. So I have already labeled many of these for ease of reassembly. So here I mark top in, and I had an arrow that shows up. So we don't want this thing turned around or upside down. We want it in this position upon reassembly. I also want to mention the way these edges are beveled. This is beveled towards the front of the oven. This was beveled to the back of the oven, which is going to mate with the one next to it. So I want to talk about how they mate. They would mate like this, like a shingle on a roof. That way there's no gaps, so the forced air is directed through the finger assembly. So this one I call top, middle, in. Okay? Because this particular oven, this is the entrance. The belt goes this direction. It's a right to left. So that's how I just mark the components in and out into position. So we have top in, top middle in. And then I just place it out of the way. We have another blank. This is a full blank. This is a partial blank. Top, up arrow, middle. So this is in the middle of the bake chamber. I just put it to the side here. And from the window, I'll be able to scoot the last finger out. And I call it top, middle, out. So at this point, I like just to show you where we engrave the part numbers of the finger assembly. So they're right here. And then as you clean these, the outer panel just slides off of the manifold. Okay. And then we have the inner panel, and that just lifts out. So as you take these apart, it's very easy for you to clean them. And reassembly is captive. And we just slide it all around. And that's the top, middle, out. Then the last one, and I'll just scoot it forward. Is another partial blank, arrow up, top, out. So that's at the exit in. So what I would recommend as you're new to this, you would then reassemble the top. So reassemble is up, top, out would be the first thing, and slide it in as far as you can. And then the next one was top, middle, out. And since it's an upper, we want to make sure the outer panel is directing the heat down. And there's a little ledge on the front of the oven that supports the weight of the front of the manifold. We push it in as far as we can. And then we have the top, middle, arrow up, middle blank. And we'll try to position that down as far as we can. And then we have the top, middle, in. So I need to go to the other side and push everything down. I'm doing it from one end only for the camera's sake, but you can certainly work from the other side as well. So I've moved all the blanks and all the fingers all the way down, and I've wiggled it. Remember we talked about positioning is important, but also fit. And then the last piece, we'll wiggle that into position. And then I want to reinstall the upper in plug. And the eyebrow, I had previously marked with the felt tip pin the position of where it was. And then reapply the wing nuts. So now the upper fingers have been removed, repositioned, and fitted. The next step will be to remove the conveyor. So I've taken the liberty of loosening with a screwdriver what's called the chain guard, and that is removed. You'll notice that there is a little gap here for a support member on the conveyor frame. So I'll just put that to the side. And then we will move the conveyor in a little bit, which will allow me the opportunity to remove the chain. This is a chain-driven oven. Typically what I do is leave it on the conveyor motor sprocket so it doesn't get misplaced. I'll also want to remove the crumb pans. You probably ought to clean these after every meal. We want the louvers closest to the bake chamber. That brings me to another point. How often do you need to clean this oven? Good question. I recommend for my customers, after the first 2 weeks of operation, break it down like I'm going to show you in this instructional video, and just monitor how much food soil is in the bake chamber, and then change the frequency accordingly. I know some customers, they break it down every week. So the cleaner the oven, the more reliable it's going to be, the better performance it's going to be. So this is something to keep in mind. So now I need to go to the other side and pick up the other end of the conveyor so I can withdraw it coming this way. You're going to notice this is a folding conveyor frame, which means it's very simple to remove, even though there may be a wall or some equipment to this side of the oven. You're going to see a stop. This is the stop frame on the conveyor. There's one on the other end, and these stops are on the outside of these end plugs. So that's why I needed to raise up the other side so I could push it forward. I ask you, always ask for help when you're removing this. I'm going to try to remove it by myself, and I should be able to, but it's very heavy. But do ask for assistance. Once the conveyor belt is out, I then just move it to the side and secure it so it doesn't fall. The next step is to remove the lower end plug. And typically what I do is I try to keep the things on the top of the bake chamber on top of the oven, and the items below the bake chamber below the oven. This one I have probably not marked yet. I will find me a magic marker, but this is the bottom finger. And notice there's some tabs on the outer panel that must be in the channel. It's got to be inside the channel to contain it. So right now, I will call this bottom in, bottom entrance. And then I'm going to put this to the side. I try to line them up for ease of reassembly. So this one would then be called bottom middle. And you can see the food soil that's collected on the outer panel here. So this will be bottom, middle, out. I have one more finger assembly to pull out here. And we're going to call this bottom, out. So now that the bottom fingers are removed, I just want you to see all the loose powder It's in the bottom floor of the oven cavity. So how often do you clean the oven? It may be on a weekly basis. Now this is just dried cheese. But what happens, since it falls to the floor of the oven, our return air is to the bottom. It's one of our exclusive features. Once the forced air gives up its heat to the product, it either falls to the floor or rises to the top of the bake chamber, and then goes through two openings, one at the bottom and one up on top here, to be recharged with heat. So what we don't want is this powder to get into the airstream. Let's say you're doing pizza, it'll look like someone has peppered it. So that's the importance of the cleaning. Also, we find the cleaner the oven, the better the performance, the better the reliability, and it'll give you years of service. So right now I just want to reposition the bottom fingers. So I'm going to start with the bottom out. This happens a lot. Make sure you understand that the outer panel is blowing toward the product. Also make sure that the front of the outer panel is resting on that front lip. And secondly, we want to make sure that we've captured that flange in the outer panel inside the rear C channel. So right now I'm going to position them back where they should be, but I also wiggle them once they're in position for that fit. Remember we talked about bottom, middle, out? How we want these flanges on both sides to layer with the one next to it. You're going to find that when you replace these finger assemblies, it really doesn't take a whole lot of force. If it takes a lot of force, then something's wrong. Bottom in. So all the fingers are in position, and then the next step would be the bottom in pin. Okay, and then the wing nuts. While I'm here, let me explain two things. As this belt stretches or shrinks in time, on the other end we have these bolts, these nuts, thumb bolts. And it allows you, the operator, to stretch the belt or loosen the belt. We don't want it too slack or too loose, so you have the opportunity to adjust as the belt stretches or shrinks. The other thing, since this is a folding conveyor, before you put it back in the bake chamber, make sure that the various links, the way we weave the belt, is outside of these sprockets. If it's moved one way or the other, there's plenty of slack here to where you can put it in the right position. So here's the sprocket. So the sprocket side would go in last. So let's see if I can. So once you get it about this far in, you can go to the other side. You want to push it in until this stop is on the outside of the lower end plug. We had talked about that earlier. So now the conveyor is in position. the next step would be to add the drive chain to the sprocket here. So you'd raise up, push it in just a little bit so you can attach the chain to the sprocket, similar to your bicycle. Check to make sure the stop is clear of the lower end plug. And then we have our chain guard. And with a screwdriver, we want to make sure that it's flat against the frame, and the notch is where this frame cross member is. And then tighten so there's no chance it could come off while the conveyor is operating. Our other wow oven is called the PS670. Similar method on how to clean it. On the 670, which is a 70-inch tunnel, the chain guard is on the front, but on the left-hand side. But everything else would be identical. On removing the eyebrow, the upper end plug, marking the fingers, and on that same oven, we have a diagram like this on that control panel opposite the display. But make sure you mark each one as you pull out. Frame is a two-fold, so you can flip it into 3 sections as it comes out. So, let's go over what I've told you. Find the owner's manual. If you don't have it any longer, please go to the website and share that with your staff on the operation and the cleaning and maintenance of this oven. Secondly, safety is a big thing. Unplug the unit, disconnect the power before you disassemble it. Clean the oven when it's cool. Mark the position of each one of those finger assemblies. And lastly, fit. Once they're in position, wiggle them so they overlap so we don't negatively affect the performance of the oven. If you have any questions, you can go to our website and contact us, and we'll certainly get back in touch with you as quick as we can. And thank you very much for your time today to learn how to disassemble and reassemble the PS640 and the PS670 Wow Oven by Middleby Marshall.